Good afternoon, everybody, live from FDIC. It's me, Tom Merrill, host of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. So glad you're here to join us today. I have a very special guest on hand. Been my right-hand person for many, many years, and now we're co-arts at the Fire Commission District in Snyder, New York. He's a fellow commissioner. He was my first assistant chief. He took over as chief when I stepped down. And I'm so glad to have Paul Gribner here with me today, again, live from FDIC. And Paul, it is so good to be back in Indianapolis with thousands of our brothers and sisters sharing this fire service heritage that we love so much, isn't it?
Tom, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was so great that, we're able to get back, even though it took about a year and a half, and looking forward to April already. Because,
Absolutely. Can't wait to get back.
Until we got here, didn't realize how much I missed it, but it's so good to get back and see everybody and meet our old friends.
Yeah, meet old friends and make new friends. And, we got here Sunday and right away it was like old home days, just running into so many people that you haven't seen in, well, a year and a half or more, and just making old connections again and meeting so many new people. It's already like we have 100 new friends from people we've been introduced to and just start talking to, like we just did at lunch. We just stopped for a quick pretzel at lunch, and a couple other firefighters came up to our table. One was from, Massachusetts?
And the other one was from Connecticut.
And there we go. Two other brothers that we met today that we know if we see them out later tonight or tomorrow, boom, they will be friends of ours, right?
Absolutely. And that's what you get when you go to classes too. I was in the, as you were, the training the last couple of days, the 4-hour sessions, and I met so many people there that I now see in the hallway, and you stop and talk to them, and it's just great.
It really is invigorating, and it fires you up and gets you so excited to get back home to your home department and try some new ideas and go back to responding to calls. And it's just there's nothing like FDIC. We're looking out over the trade show floor right now, and it's just see all the products out there. They're getting the booths set up, and just great to be back in Indianapolis, and great to be back at the great FDIC. What you think of those the opening ceremony day? We had the governor on hand, the mayor. Boy, they really gave us a good welcome. Chief of department.
Well, I'll tell you, I just wish Bobby get more excitement, but I just know. And obviously I'm kidding, but I mean, Bob, I look forward to it every year. I've been coming here now, I think 20 years. And, last, obviously a few years, Bobby, I always know that Bobby's going to get me fired up. And I know he's going to get me fired up tomorrow morning when he goes through. So
Yeah.
It's just, and it's great. It just recharges your battery.
It really does. And like I said, Paul and I met when Paul joined the Snyder Fire Department in 1988, I believe
Correct,
it was.
sir.
And
Correct.
we served together as lieutenants, captains, up through the ranks. I was just one step ahead of him as chief. He was my first assistant. Then he took over as chief when I stepped down, and now we're commissioners together. And we've been working so well together for years. We forged such a good partnership. We've accomplished so much and look forward to accomplishing so much more in the years to come. So FDIC, you think this is about your 20th one?
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking about on the way coming down on Sunday. I remember being out at the airport, and I remember that time it was March, and there was snow on the grass, and I'll never forget that. And Jim Keppel was our chief.
Yeah.
I believe back then, and obviously now we progressed to April, and today, this week, August. It's been a beautiful week.
Yeah. It's one thing too that we're so excited about. We have a beautiful week here. The weather forecast continues to be beautiful. When we come in April or sometimes in March, we've been lucky. We haven't really had many rainouts, but sometimes it gets pretty cool. But we got a beautiful week here. We're just enjoying being out. That's the beauty of it too. The training is second to none. The classes are phenomenal. And then you go out at night and network. You just keep bumping into the legends of our fire service, and even people that aren't legendary. They're just regular firefighters. There's nobody better, right? Like the two we just met at lunch. It's just so much fun. Just your head spinning, talking to everybody, seeing everybody, and you're fired up.
And as I always tell everybody, I said, if you can only attend one conference a year, this is the one. You got to come here because it's all here. And whether you just come for the hot training, I mean, I know a lot of people just, it's obviously there's an expense to anything.
Mhm.
But if you go to the hot training, so you're here Monday and Tuesday, or you come, as I used to do when I was working before I retired, I'd come on Tuesday nights. So I was here for the opening ceremonies and through Saturday and the vendor show, which is second to none.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about the vendor show, which is true. There's thousands upon thousands of pieces of equipment out there and millions of dollars in inventory. Can't wait to get out there and check that out. So I just want to tell you folks that, the name of my program is the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. And I choose the word professional because I think it's such an important trait of a firefighter. And nobody represents that better than Paul. So I'm so glad to have him on with me because since I've known him, he's been the consummate professional in everything that he does, whether it's running a call, whether it's planning an event, whether it's on the training ground or just hanging out at the firehouse or even out in the public. The man is a true professional and is deserving to be on this show. So thank you for allowing me to grab you to be on the show today at the last minute. Last night, I think we were up. By the way, I'm looking for a guest tomorrow. And you agreed. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my honor and my pleasure. And again, I appreciate your kind words, but I will say that working with you, and especially when I was 9-1 and you were chief, I couldn't have got any better training for my 5 years as chief. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So 20 years of FDIC. One thing we talk about, and I wanted to start off with today, is just how important it is if you can do it to get to conferences like this. And one thing we've noticed in the fire service is we're not seeing the excitement from as many of the younger generation as we would like to see. Understand there is so much available like this online, totally understandable. Budgets are a concern, totally understandable. But what we're seeing is some people who have the opportunity don't take advantage of it. What would you like to say to anyone listening out there about the importance of maybe coming here and seeing it in person?
Well, and especially as a young person, and I think that, obviously we struggle even with getting newer members, which is a whole nother topic and class that I attended as you did for recruitment retention. But, I think when we go back to the fire hall, and I know you will, and I certainly will, to just talk about FDIC, but again, something like this. Now I'm not, me, I'm old guy, I'm not big on social media, but to me, that's how we got to capture the young people. And I know our captain Polvino is good at that, but to me, the show, like we saw this morning at the opening ceremony, those shots of hot training, to me, that got me fired up.
Yeah.
And I'm an old guy. And I think, I think the young people see that, they would love that. So to me, that is the thing that they need to look at.
Yeah, we brought one of our young lieutenants. He's not so young, but newer lieutenant in our department this year. He arrived yesterday, and it's his first FDIC. Been in the fire service for a while. He came to us from another department out of state, but this is his first FDIC. So it's going to be interesting to get his feedback. But I could tell during the opening ceremony today, he was already hooked. He was already hooked.
Well, but yeah, he was sitting between us, and I know he was real excited because his reaction to everything that was going on, obviously Bobby and the Chiefs keynote, and it was just great, as it always is. And the bagpipe. See, I love the bagpipes. I always get emotional. I mean, it's nothing like it.
Nothing like it. What it is, I think Chief Lasky calls it like Disney World for firefighters. I think that's pretty accurate too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was good to see so many people in the hall. I mean, I thought, extremely well attended.
Yeah. We were curious, everyone, about how attendance going to be. We've heard, it's going to be terrible. It's going to, because it changed, COVID screwed everything up, right? And then the conference got moved to August, and it got moved to earlier August. So we were kind of wondering, but I got to tell you, see a lot of people out there. I had my class yesterday. I did a 4-hour professional volunteer fire department class. 31 or 32 very engaged students, had a great conversation with them all. And I, as the instructor, I leave fired up. My students inspire me and get me excited. So, hey, I can't believe we're already at Wednesday. I mean, it seems the week is just flying by. Unbelievable. So we took several classes already. Paul and I went to various workshops. We took one together. For those that don't know, there's 2 4-hour workshops on Monday, 2 4-hour workshops on Tuesday. Well, I just wanted to take some time and review some of the classes that we've taken and maybe just pass on a few nuggets of information to give you some highlights of these classes. Also some pointers that you can maybe even try in your own hometown volunteer department, and also maybe hook you to come to the next FDIC in April, which will be here before you know it. So the first class we took was the one we took together Monday at 8 a.m. Breaking Barriers to Recruitment and Retention by the great Candace McDonald. Dr. Candace McDonald does a phenomenal job.
Oh, absolutely.
You were very impressed with her.
She was awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned how impressed you were, and a very timely topic. right? What fire department out there, and you send Tammy a note right now if you're not having a recruitment or retention problem, because I think that's a common thread that all volunteer fire departments share. And boy, that was a class that the full 4 hours flew by, and she provided a lot of great information. Paul, what were some of your takeaways from what she had to say?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, we've been talking about this in our home department, and so coming here and taking that class, but I found one thing I would say is it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not just one fix. You got to look at a lot.
No
of
pill you
different,
can swallow.
and to go out, and that's what we're doing back home in Snyder, and I that just reinforced it. What she brought up, because a lot of things, like I say, it's just not one size fits all, not one fix. You
Right.
got to have multiple approaches. And again, like I said earlier, the social media aspects of it, which I don't totally get, but I think that's a great avenue. And then, what she talked about, Tom, she talked about, and we had gone to the high schools, and she said, it's too late. You got to go to the middle schools. And
I thought that was a heck of
and
a
I
point
go,
she made.
okay, boom, hit me in the side of the head. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, Candace said if you really should go to the middle schools, because by high school, the students are so actively involved in so many different things, sports, musical, whatever it might be. It's hard maybe to get the high schoolers in. Try to middle school. Maybe there's a junior program, but even if there isn't a junior program, you're laying the foundation, you're providing some information, and you can talk to them about, hey, when you get to be 16 or 18, consider this as a volunteer opportunity. Great point.
Yep.
What I loved, and I put on my social media page, was her quote, which is, firefighters hate two things, right? We say it all the time: change and the way things are. That's what the great Alan Brunacini chief used to say all the time. And Candace had a phenomenal quote when she said, we have to constantly evolve, or we are going to be another Sears. Who doesn't remember? Well, we're dating ourselves,
Yes,
maybe a little bit with the gray hair, and but who doesn't remember the Sears catalog, right? Especially their Christmas edition. When you were a child, you waited so anxiously for that Sears catalog to come, and for 100+ years, Sears was the #1 retailer, and they were on the cutting edge of doing things, and everybody bought things at Sears, whether it was appliances or Christmas gifts or clothing, whatever. What happened? Right? They didn't evolve. Candace had a great point. She said Sears could have been the next Amazon if they evolved. So the lesson there is, don't be afraid to say, let's give it a try. Don't be so fast to say no to everything, right, Paul?
And again, that's why I think you need a multi-pronged approach, because I know back home, again, we're looking at many different things. And you have to, because you might go down one road and it's just doesn't work.
Mhm.
And now where are you? Now, if
Mhm.
you have multiple things going on, and we've already seen it at home, where we've expanded our boundaries and taken in different things, and it's already paid dividends.
Right.
So
Very timely for us, because as fire commissioners, we have a committee that's been coming to us, to the Board of Commissioners, with new ideas for us to consider. And we've got a few that we put in place. We expanded our borders, and we're also considering other ideas that have been presented to us, such as maybe taking in members of different category types, or letting members sign up for shifts instead of holding them to a percentage. Candace was big on that. She said the days of holding people to a percentage, you might want to rethink that.
no, I'll tell you, talk about a paradigm shift. And then, again, that's one right there for me, and I think for all of us. And a lot of things we talk about are a big paradigm shift. I mean, and then the older they get, the less you want to change. But I absolutely can see the need for it. It absolutely has to change, because the world changed, and that's
Mhm.
always the way it is. I mean, I'm sure, the people 40 years ago said the same thing. I don't know what's going to happen to the volunteer fire service, but
Yeah.
here we are. So I
Yep.
know we'll evolve. I know we'll do it. We'll do what we have to do. It's just that right now, maybe the picture isn't real clear, but we'll get there.
Yeah. And Candace pointed out too, the cost of recruiting and getting volunteers starting out is very, very expensive. So she spent a lot of time about how to keep them, how to motivate them to stay, how to retain them. Retention is such a big thing. And just a couple things she said is, one of the things that I think we're getting better at is, once you hook them, is keeping them. There's so much competing for people's time today. There's so many other distractions that they can easily walk away if they're not engaged immediately. So she said, yeah, you got to obviously put them through a process of orientating them, but you got to do it organized. You've got to stay in touch with them. You've got to communicate with them, and you've got to give them things to do pretty quickly, or they're not going to feel valued. And if they don't feel valued,
And the other thing, Tom, is, is again, listing the expectations, when they come through the door. I mean, most people walk through the door and they have no idea. In fact, most of the time, people don't even realize our fire company is 100% volunteer. When you
Right.
tell people that, and you've said the same thing, they look at you like, are you kidding me? And but anyway, so anybody walking in the door, we get them that far, you got to sit down, you got to sit with them and say, hey, these are our expectations. This is what it's gonna, because they need to know up front. Because like you said, if they come in and all of a sudden it's this wow unsurmountable mountain, you're definitely going to lose them. So you
Yeah.
gotta let them know what's expected. Like the first year, the second year, all those things. Percentages, all those things.
Yeah, you know what that's called? Communication,
There,
right?
there you
The
go.
C word, communication. And you know what, Candace, another thing I just thought of that she said, so astute. Dr. Candace McDonald's phenomenal instructor, great information. Remember what she said? And I think you liked it too, is ask them how they want to be communicated with.
Right.
We might just assume
That was
everybody
good.
wants a text. That's not so true. We might just assume that people prefer phone calls. That's not so true,
Yeah.
is it?
Oh, you're right. And that was funny when she said that, because we looked at each other and say, yeah, it's absolutely true. So
Yeah, so she said, you have 3 to 6 months, is what she said, of a window of opportunity to really get them involved in the organization. And if they don't in those first 3 to 6 months, you could lose them. So engage them, talk to them, communicate with them, find out what the organization can do for them to make them successful. What are they looking to get out of it?
yeah, and you're right, Tom. And yeah, what are they going to get? And include family too. Don't forget that. There's so much going through my mind right now. I don't want to forget it. But yeah, one of the things is certainly in, what do they get out of it? What's the little perks they get out of it? What is their family? We want to include the families, because we know without support at home, you're not going to be able to do it.
Right.
And then the other thing is a mentor program. I've been big on that. We don't have it, to be quite honest. I want to see it at Snyder, and I would love to be a mentor. And so somebody comes in and assign me that person, and it's awesome. I think it's a great thing. I think anybody coming in, like I said, really, they're not going to know, and they need someone to be able to call. Hey, Paul, this is what's going on. Can you tell me what's going on? Or me to be proactive. So I think it's a very valuable thing.
And then she said, this was a sobering statistic, folks. We love the volunteer fire service, right? We celebrate this brotherhood and sisterhood, right? But you know what the study says? 38%, only 38% report being satisfied being a volunteer firefighter. That blew me away.
Yeah.
Why is that? What are you thinking?
Well, sometimes because I've been doing this a long time, as have you, longer than I have. But sometimes I think well, and you're not older. I'm older than you are. But I think everything changes, and I think family dynamics have changed, and work and things have changed at work. We used to have the shift work when I first started. We had a lot of shift work. We don't have it.
Yeah.
Things have changed, and your time and the kids are more involved, and it just, at least it seems that way to me.
Right.
And I just think that, and that's what happens. Society changes, and I think you made the point to me the other day about people still volunteer, but they don't necessarily volunteer as a firefighter. They're doing other things. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities, because sometimes, the millennials get that bad rap and not being volunteers, but that's not true.
No.
But what it is they're volunteering, but in different areas than you and I did when we were, just coming up and getting into our 20s and 30s and got interested in the fire department.
Right. So you got to engage them and talk to them about how the fire department can work for them, and then listen to what they offer you. They might have some skill sets that you could put to use, and they might not all involve dragging that hose line down the hallway. But hey, you need someone to do your social media. You need someone to do administrative work. You need someone to do fundraising. You need somebody to do treasury work, all those. So, see what's out there in your community and put them to work. And you know what else is out there in the community? I think it's pretty much in every community. Females. And what's the percentage? 9% of the fire service is female. You think there's a recruitment opportunity there, people? I think there is. And you know what? We've had many successful females, as I'm sure the thousands of listeners have as well, in our department.
And fortunately, we still do. Not to the number that you and I would like to see, but you're right. I guess maybe there's still a perception out there, and I'm sure there is, that, this is a male dominated, which we know is not true.
It
We
was at one
know it's
time,
not
but we're
true.
breaking the barriers down. And
Absolutely. But sometimes things stick, even though things have changed, sometimes that perception doesn't change. So, I mean, obviously all of us have to make sure we get that word out there, and whether it's on our websites or whether it's obviously in our recruitment programs that we
Right.
put out there. And, we need to make sure that everybody feels well. I'll give you a real quick example, and we go to a fire prevention at like a school or a preschool. And I love to take one of our female firefighters can go, that's awesome. You know why? Because the little girls in the audience there, they go, oh, you know what? I too can be a
do this.
firefighter. I think Candace mentioned that during her talk, because she kind of looked at it saying, I guess, only the boys can be a firefighter. Well, certainly we know that's not true. So again, another great opportunity for the boys and the girls in that preschool class.
And we have a very strong female firefighter from our area accompanying us here on this trip. We were with her a couple times already this week. She's a neighboring first assistant fire chief, a deputy chief in some areas it's referred to. In our area, it's first assistant chief from the Clarence Fire Company. And she does a phenomenal job. It's fun being with her. And I predict she'll probably be the first fire chief in our immediate area that we've had. We've had several assistant fire chiefs, but they've stepped down when other life obligations got in their way. But I think she's going to do a great job.
Oh,
She does do
definitely
a
will.
great
Yeah,
job.
she's well prepared for the job.
Absolutely. So, excuse me, one other thing Candace talked about, she sat with us and gave us a game plan of how we can retain members and how we can recruit members. And she said, start off with creating a list of the jobs that you need to do in your department. And we wrote those jobs down, and you think it's firefighting, it's EMS, maybe driving. How many other jobs did we come up with?
I mean, yeah, like a dozen.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
It was just when you think about it, I mean, I always think of it as a small business or a medium-sized business, because that's what it is. We need many different people, to support the operation.
Right, right. And then she got into having this onboarding process that gets them involved quickly, but not just that, tell them what they need to know to be successful. Tell them what your house rules are. Tell them all the little miscellaneous things that they maybe were told when they were interested in joining, but now that they're a member, make sure they truly understand what it means to be a firefighter. You can't get mad at somebody for, say, a social media post that's against your standard if no one told them what that standard is. So you got to put together an organized onboarding program. The day of throwing gear at somebody and saying, come on, just start going to calls, it's over.
I remember you and I, we both done orientations in our career, and new members. I always felt bad for them because I felt I really overwhelmed them and hardly scratched the surface.
Absolutely. And she also mentioned, to get those members, one thing I left out about that is, and it's never thought of it, always have an action button. If you're advertising on your social media pages, click to submit or click for application. Don't discount how important that is. You're hooking them with that information or that exciting graphic, whatever it is. Make sure you got a click to submit button with that, or at least click here to send an email to get an email with more information. So important.
And it's funny too, she said about having both the written and electronic application form. So I would download the paper and mail it in, right? But probably a lot of people would just fill it out electronically and hit the send button.
Yeah.
So, but I have both though. As I thought that, again, another great little point that it probably seems obvious to most people, but
What's that, having the two?
having the two,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, duh, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's like some people don't like text, some people like phone calls, vice
Exactly,
versa. So
exactly.
yeah, may have two versions of it, right? And then the other thing she said about teaching them about all the miscellaneous rules and tidbits is teach them what it means to be a firefighter. Teach them what it means to be a firefighter. I talk about that in my class. It's not all hooks, haligans, and hoses. It's about ethics. It's about integrity. It's about behaving correctly and treating people nicely and respectfully. The public, but our own members as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And having pride. I mean, I know you talked about that in your class, and she talked about it, and it's wearing the t-shirt and presenting yourself well at calls or wherever you are, whenever you're wearing that t-shirt, because you are representing that fire department.
And during the orientation, don't be afraid to invite the family in, involve them in some way, let them know what they can expect.
Yeah, I thought that was a great point. And
Yeah, and then, so now we get them in, and how can we best accommodate them? She talked about shifts. She thinks, again, we talked about this at the beginning. She's thinking the day of the percentage system maybe has passed us by. Should we penalize, I'm sorry, should the parent be penalized for missing a fire drill because they were at their child's softball game? Should they feel guilty if they choose going to an emergency call over little Jane's soccer game? Let them sign up for shifts that they can be committed to be able to go to calls and training. Some can do it for 24/7. I think that's difficult. It can be done. I've been in companies that have done it, or been involved in companies that have done it. But why not let people maybe volunteer hours instead of having to hold them to a percentage?
Well, and again, that's what we talked earlier about having
Right.
a multiple prong approach. I mean, maybe there's not one way to do it.
Right.
I mean, I think you can have both. I mean, why not have a duty program where people can come in because that works better for them and still have a percentage for it? Why not do both?
Right.
I mean, I don't think anything's mutually exclusive here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then she also talked about how to accommodate the training. Maybe you can be more flexible, and we fall into this we're very rigid with training back home in our department with every Wednesday night, been
Yep.
that way since
Yep.
I think 1952 is when it went to Wednesday nights, if I know our history
Of course you do.
correctly.
You know our history.
But Wednesday night, it was Friday before that. And what did she say? Friday actually in some departments works better, which
Because they don't have
boom,
to get up Saturday morning.
that
for
blew
work.
me away. That
Well,
blew me away.
When I was in Kenilworth, we did Friday nights.
Okay, Paul
So-
did the Friday night.
So, but I think again, so multiple, instead of just one night, multiple, plus also recording it. I mean,
yeah,
you know what? So people can do it whenever they have the convenience to do it. Not all drills can do that, but there are a lot that can do that, where you can actually do everything online. We just experienced this with Zoom, right? In the
we sure
pandemic
did.
and
We sure
the
did.
different things. So we know it works.
And then one other big area she really spent a lot of time on was non-wage benefits to make people
Oh.
feel good about being at their department, giving them other things to do. Another huge list that we came up with. She talked about the swag items. I thought that was
Yeah,
interesting,
yep,
give
give
them
some
stuff,
swag, yep.
give them the t-shirts, the
Right, the
hats, the
hats,
jackets,
yep.
things like that. But
Right.
right. I never heard that word before, but I don't know. What do I know? But and then when we came up with this list of non-wage benefits of things we can do, or no, she actually asked, what are we doing in our firehouses? Do you remember some of the things? A fitness room some fire companies have, or what? A fitness contract with neighboring or community gyms and
Right,
workout places.
Right, yeah, go to your gym and see, what can you get a couple passes, and then everybody kind of shares the pass. So, you use it whenever you can and everybody can access it. And so there's a lot of different things that we are, and a silly thing that you and I talk about, which I think is great, is our wash bay.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds dumb. Well, you live in Buffalo, it's good to rinse the salt off the car. And
That's
believe me,
right.
that's a big thing.
It is. You get used quite a bit. We have an empty apparatus bay in our firehouse. It's designated the wash bay where we can bring our family cars in and wash them off. And it does
Very
get used quite a bit.
popular.
Is that basically it's only from like September
Right.
through April, right? That we're in there rinsing it off.
Well, now you sound like we have snow 8 months a year, which we do not.
So what are some other non-wage benefits? How about a game room, TV games, or how about free snacks, sodas and chips? And you mentioned one that came up, which again seems silly. The use of tables and chairs for parties that we at a graduation party for my daughter back at the end of June. And where did I get the tables and chairs? From the firehouse,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
A non-wage benefit.
And it sounds like a silly thing, but again, it's people appreciate that. They talked about also making sure you get together, having picnics and include the family. And again, I know we talked about it, but I think that's so important. The family has to be on board.
Yeah,
Has to be on board.
absolutely. And she talked about team events, the picnics like you just mentioned, but also team building events where you bring the family up to the firehouse for a movie night. She pointed out a call might drop and the firefighters have to leave for that call. The families are still there together. They get to meet each other. They get to know each other. Kids play together. Now you maybe have a party down the road a little bit and people now know each other just that much more and they make that connection.
Yep, absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
good stuff. Bring the family in on a training night. There's family drills that can be done together. She mentioned some of those.
Yep.
What she mentioned, how about health and nutrition? physical fitness.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be all fire or EMS related, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of things. And again, I'm sure a lot of people listening to us have a ton of ideas that we haven't thought of, that Candace hasn't thought of.
So true. So that was Dr. Candace McDonald's class, and I've got a ton more notes on that, but I know we took other classes, and I don't want to be a downer here, but the class you took Monday afternoon with Commissioner Bugby from our department was another real eye opener, wasn't it? Paul? I
Well,
wondered if you could talk about that.
And it's the firefighter cancer. It's the firefighter cancer that I've learned so much about over the last few years that, and I think it's so important. And we just took another class with Bob Callahan that reinforced that. But it's just so super important and so much education. And that's again why I love to come to Indy, because you learn so much. And the firefighter cancer is certainly we all have to be aware of it. And I don't care what your age is. You have to be aware of it. We've done so many things differently now. Simple things like gross decon at the scene, washing your clothes, your gear when you get back to the fire hall, washing your clothes when you get home, washing yourself, right? Shower within the hour. I love that because it's so easy to remember that phrase. And we just got to do such a better job of it. I'm little, I hate to admit this, but I was one of those guys that had the dirty faces and my helmet one time was white is now, a much darker color. And that was something to be proud of. Well, no, it was not. But I didn't know any better and we didn't know any better. So, anybody out there, I tell you, the firefighter cancer, we have to be aware of it. We have to do our air monitoring. We have to be on air. There's a ton of information out there, and I just encourage everybody to just look into it.
I remember coming back from fires back in the day and thinking it was so cool to blow your nose into a hanky and have nothing but dark, residue from the fire. And I remember just the smell would be in my car for weeks because you didn't wash your gear. And the bottom line is, and we have a couple. I tell the story in my class, folks. We in my town, and I probably said it on my show before, but in their memory, I'm going to say it again. In our town of Amherst, New York, 52 square mile town protected by 10 volunteer fire departments, 3 chief officers in a 14-month period died of cancer. 2 in their 40s, 1 in their early 50s. So I want to just say it's very real. Mark Heim, Radar Riley, and Mike Morris. God rest their soul. They were wonderful men, great chief officers. And that, more than anything, says to me how real this is. They died of crazy, unreal crazy cancers that they can't even really explain. The only common denominator was they were firefighters. So this cancer scare, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, it's real.
It's real. And and we've learned so much, Tom, as I
have.
already said, things that we can do, and we do them now. And it's never too late. Never too late to pick up those good habits now that we know more. The more, we're educated. And now it would be a crime if we don't follow, because now we are educated. Okay. I can use the excuse I didn't know any better, but you know what? Now I do, Tom. And so shame on me if I don't do the right things. So we don't go through the gross decon, or make sure that everybody goes through the gross decon, and remind people, or use the wipes. We have the wipes on the trucks now to wipe off your neck and your face and everything, all those vulnerable areas. And more importantly, just wash your clothes when you get home and jump in that shower.
Right. Stuff that doesn't even cost a lot of money.
It doesn't anything.
Right?
I mean, it doesn't cost anything. You should be doing that anyway.
I know they sell a lot of rinsing tools and that, and they'll probably see them on the trade room floor, but you know what? Dawn dishwashing soap and a bristle brush with a little garden hose adapter on your pumper does wonders for cleaning the gear, doesn't it?
Dawn does wonders for everything, I think. But
yeah. So true. So cancer awareness, cancer prevention, another inexpensive or free thing you can do. Go on the National Volunteer Fire Council's website. They have a wonderful poster you can download and print on steps that can be taken to reduce the cancer risk in your firehouse. And you can post those throughout your firehouse. Great reminder. And I know I've said this before, we just talk so much about recruitment and retention. I guess that could be a real detriment if we don't handle it correctly, because it's almost like join the volunteer fire service and get cancer. No, no, if we take the steps and show that we're professionals taking the steps that are necessary to mitigate the risk, then we're doing the right thing.
And one of the, in fact, I've got something I'm going to take home, a couple of posters, what you can do for yourself. 3 steps that you can just, to check yourself to make sure, there's something that's different, and it lasts longer than 2 weeks, those kinds of things. It's real easy stuff. And it's stuff that, it's not at one glance at all of our firefighters walking by our board there they're going to see that. And hopefully they're going to say, okay, look, you know what, that's great information. Those are the kinds of things that it's easy to do, simple to do, and hopefully, people will take advantage of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the other classes, while Paul was in that one, I went to a class on how to be a better instructor, how to be a better presenter of information. And
Did it work?
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Still struggling. in
I'm
that
sorry. I've known
department.
him a long time.
This was taught by Steve Crothers from the Seattle Fire Department. And he said some great points in that class. He said departments need to do a better job teaching how to be a better instructor, because so often what happens is, and I thought of this in the volunteer fire service for sure, it's congratulations, brand new lieutenant, brand new captain. Here's your new helmet. Here's your new badge. Oh, by the way, teach SCBA training next Tuesday night. Or you're the best nozzle firefighter in your department. You're the best EMT or paramedic. So naturally they think you're just able to teach the subject matter. Not true at all. We need to give our members the tools necessary, give them the information that they need to just make themselves a better instructor. And he had some great points in there. Talked about PowerPoint. We all use it. I use it, but avoid the death by PowerPoint where you're turning your back to the audience and just reading every slide. He prefers, and I agreed, less words, more photos. Let the photos tell the story that you are telling. The PowerPoint should supplement you as the instructor and help pass on the information more than the words that are on there. And you've got to take the time to prepare. You got to practice. We had funny stories in the class about how people practice. He said he'd be in the shower and rehearsing, and his wife would pass by and wonder, who are you talking to while you're in the shower? Me, I'll tell you a true story. A lot of times when I'm going to do a class, and it just happened before I did my class this week, sometimes I'll wake up and it's not healthy, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's going through my brain, things I'm going to be talking about, things I'm going to be saying. But the bottom line is, for anyone that's going to instruct, help yourself get better by reading about some points that instructors that have out there that you can read from about what makes it better, what your students can learn from, how they can learn from you better, and how to maybe put a good PowerPoint program together. And he offered some just great information on how to do that. And I took that class while you were in your cancer class, but then you also took another class that I did not attend on peer support. Did you not?
Yes. Commissioner Bugby and I did. And again, another great class. I'm 4 for 4 on my classes the last 2 days, but the peer support one was just opened my eyes to a lot of things. I really wanted to educate myself, as did Captain Bugby, and and it really did. And it just basically, and anybody can do this. No, there's no training here. This is, you're just being a human being. You're just, all you have to do is be a good listener, and just be a good human being, and show, and you're there for your fellow, whoever it is. And in this case, obviously our emphasis was on our fellow firefighters, but all you got to do is be there for them. And we've all heard the sad stories, right? The suicides and all the stories that are out there, but we can all be that peer support person. Again, every one of us can do that. And it's just a question of being able to, kind of keep your eyes open to see, hey, is somebody that I know acting differently? Are they all of a sudden real quiet? Now you got a person that's all of a sudden really into, and all of a sudden notice they're kind of in a shell. Is do you take the time to go over to them and talk to them? They may or may not open up, but
Right.
You know what? You're there for them, and you let them know that you're there for them. And that class was fantastic. And I'll tell you, it's just again another thing to me, a little bit like firefighter cancers, and kind of getting the word out there, because we can help ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Just great examples of all the different classes that are here, and we're just barely scratching the surface because we can only go to one at a time. And the last 2 days, it was two classes a day. So it's continuing all week here with some shorter classes, and there's just so much more to take. You mentioned about the peer support and supporting each other as brother and sister firefighters. It reminds me of the class I took yesterday, Courage Under Fire Leadership by Chief Steve Przrowski from California. And a couple great points he had as far as leadership goes. He talked a lot of good points on leadership, but I just wanted to cover a couple of them. And one that came to mind when you just mentioned about being there and supporting each other. He talked about how we used to really be good at being brothers. And he said brothers, meaning brothers, female and male, and not backstabbers. In other words, sometimes he feels that we're too quick to not support each other, and recognize today that sometimes people have very real struggles, and a good leader helps their people and works to understand their people and get to know their people and then support their people any way they can. In this class, he talked about the importance of communication, and he said you can never communicate enough. People want to know what is going on in their organization. They want to know the why things are being done. And the best way to get ahead of the rumors is to get in front of it by openly communicating. Talked about all the different ways there is to do it, department newsletters. And if you're a chief officer, don't be afraid to sit down with people. Now, he's in a big department. It's hard for the chief to get in all the firehouses. If any paid chiefs are out there listening with smaller, there's no reason you can't bounce around from departments to talk to people, get their feeling, ask them how they're doing.
Right.
What can we do better for you?
Right.
And then get out in front of any of the rumors, tell them what some of the plans are for purchases and new equipment or changes like that. And then he talked a lot about training. He had a quote about be ready when that bell rings. And part of being ready when that bell rings means you've been talking to your people, so you know their strengths and their weaknesses, and you know what you can do. Again, in the volunteers, this is huge. When you give an order, that person is capable of doing it. We all have our A members and B members. We all have our interior strong structural firefighters. We all have scene support members, and we have interior members that maybe aren't so strong. We volunteers have members afraid to climb, right? They're not ladder people. Know your
Yep,
team.
yep,
Know your team.
Yeah, right. Not everybody's comfortable on that roof. So, but communication, I think that's I think that's a key that you mentioned, and that's important in every aspect.
Absolutely. He talked a couple things too, which I found interesting on dispatching of calls and the importance of repeating back critical information. He had a very real example of critical information not being repeated. A fire happened where a woman was trapped, and all the information was being relayed to the incident command or the chief that was responding. And he said, copy that, or something very similar to that, but he never really acknowledged that the dispatch was saying there's somebody trapped there. Turns out maybe he didn't know, or because she did pass away, unfortunately, and the audio tape from that. It was really interesting.
Well, and then Tom, that's what you do.
Yeah.
So you're a dispatcher, so you understand the importance of that. And I was chief, that was very important, because sometimes, obviously you can miss stuff. It's easy to do. There's a lot going on. And so it's great to, again, it's communication.
Yeah, for sure. The chief also talked about what he called personal leadership. It's about leading ourselves. How can we be expected to lead others if we can't even lead ourselves in all that we say and do, right?
Okay.
And he had a couple examples that he talked about to reinforce what he meant by that. And he talked about like little things like parking in the fire lane. How many times you see fire chiefs that think they can park in the fire lane when they run into a store? Is that the right thing to do? I personally witnessed that in our town once when I was chief and parked in a normal spot and walked into a sporting goods store and saw a chief's vehicle parked in the fire lane. I thought they had a call. But then I'm like, no, they didn't, because I would have heard it on the fire radio.
Right.
Well, maybe they're here on a quiet call where they
Oh,
didn't.
yeah, silent. Okay.
No, they were shopping with the family.
Okay.
So I don't know. And we just didn't think, that's not really personal leadership. He told the story actually where they were doing it once. and his driver pulled into a fire lane, and they were outside the vehicle, and a woman came out of the store and said, "Must be nice to park illegally." And the
Ooh.
response from the driver, without missing a beat, was, "Lady, we're fire lane testing." And she bought it. What exactly is fire lane tasting or testing, right?
It's good to be quick on your feet, I guess. So,
He talked about integrity, and we always talk about integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Great point. You ready
Right.
for this?
I'm
He
ready.
changed it. He
I'm
said
ready. I'm ready.
he thinks it's more integrity is doing the right thing when everybody is looking.
Okay.
Because what he meant by that with today, everyone's looking.
And everybody
There
is
are
looking.
cameras
Well,
everywhere,
yeah.
cell phones up in buildings. You're being watched.
You mean your doorbell camera, that kind of
Thank you
thing?
for bringing that
Oh,
up.
you're welcome.
I was going to segue right into that. So someone came up to me after my class yesterday. I talk a lot about behaving appropriately at a scene. Sometimes we get more than enough help inside the house on a medical call, right? So we have some volunteers out at the street talking by the rescue squad or the ambulance, right? Sometimes it's even at a fire, right? People are in groups talking while we're finishing up overhauling or whatever the case may be. This fire chief came up to me yesterday at the conclusion of my class and said, "Hey, Tom, do you ever think about adding a section in there about being aware of these Ring doorbells?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Well, they had a call in his department, and some of the firefighters were out front and they were talking inappropriately. I didn't hear what they said, but it was all captured by the Ring doorbell. And this homeowner saw it, and this fire chief got a pretty nasty phone call. So be aware of that. Be aware of how we're acting and what we're talking about and what we're saying, even if we think we're out of sight and view of a homeowner or business owner, because you know what? It's all there. And
Yeah.
that you don't know when it's even being, it's most times is being recorded, right?
Yes, more
So,
times than not, I think.
yeah. So that is, personal leadership, and this Courage Under Fire leadership, great class by Chief Przowski from the California area. That was a great 4 hours that was spent. And what was the other one that you took then?
Oh, I want Mr. Brad Pinsky.
Yes, our friend, Mr.
Our
Pinsky.
friend, Mr. Pinsky, who is a very dynamic speaker, as anybody in the audience knows that. But again, in my role as a commissioner, those are the kinds of classes that sometimes you just have to take, and they're policies and procedures. And it's always good to get refreshed because there's always something new you got to cover your what on, and to make sure we're up to speed. And so it's great. It's great information. It's a ton of information. I mean, Brad has so much information. Fortunately, he sends it to you. I don't have to make notes, because it'd be too much. But just basically, your policy and procedures, and for not for necessarily operations, although that's part of it, but also for, what just your rules and regs,
Right.
and
Right.
explain the difference between, what a policy is and what are, and best practices. Just a lot of different, just great information.
Isn't one of the big hot topics now marijuana?
Well, in New York, it is.
I think it's probably going to be
in a lot
everywhere.
of places it is, and it's new for us, obviously, and of course that's going to have a huge impact on the fire service, obviously, and certainly the definition there is impairment. Our firefighters impaired, and how is there a test for that? And the answer is, well, no. And if we're, at least I'm not up on the latest and greatest in the with the technology, but obviously now today, what do? We do a breathalyzer. If we suspect them of alcohol, it's a breathalyzer, or it's a blood test. But what do you do with marijuana? What happens when you're at home and you're enjoying your legal marijuana, and then you come and heaven forbid something happens? Let's say you're a driver, right? And you have that accident. May or may not be your fault. So it's a challenge, I think, more than anything for the fire service.
But as professionals, something to stay on top of, something to consult your legal people about and think about for your organization, your department. And then Paul and I just took a class that what I thought was absolutely fantastic, and that was small boxes, big problems. It was all about fires in box stores. Who out there doesn't have a box store in their district? Who doesn't have a Dollar Tree? Who doesn't have a hardware store, CVS, and Walgreens pharmacy, right? They're out there. And he pointed out so well the challenges associated with box type store fires. And you can't apply residential tactics at a box store fire. And Bob had so many great points, did he
And I
not?
think one of his best points were pre-plan. Get out there and pre-plan that building, because otherwise your muscle memory tells you, okay, I'm going to do what I do at a house fire.
Right.
But instead, this isn't a house fire.
Mhm.
So I thought that was an excellent point, and the importance of doing pre-plans, which isn't the glory work, right?
Right.
That's
No, he
not the
mentioned
glory
that. He
work.
did. Yeah.
And you know me,
nobody
that was
likes
one of
them.
my passions. I enjoyed doing pre-plans when I was chief, but it's just, that just reinforced that.
Absolutely. And, he also talked about how these are low frequency, high risk events, and if you don't have a lot in he called it the Rolodex, if you don't have a lot of experience dealing with these types of fires, you're going to be behind the 8 ball to start with. That Rolodex so often are events that we've been familiar with. So maybe we get a lot of residential 2.5 story house fires. So our Rolodex, boom, there's a fire right to the front of our brain. We're good to go. But then this happens, and boy, are we struggling. So pre-plans are important. Know the buildings in your district, kind of know the layout, and how about the importance of the void space awareness?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, he gave a lot of good tips about obviously checking the void space and everything. And I only have one question: what's a Rolodex? No, I'm kidding. I mean,
You're old enough to know what a Rolodex is. I think you got the gray hair. You got.
but he brought that up. That's why it wasn't my line. It was, he said, you ask anybody in the room that doesn't know what a Rolodex is. Of course, you're right. I'm old enough to know.
Oh my gosh, so true.
But, no, he had great information. I mean, just did a great job, and so I'm glad I went.
Yeah,
Great class.
big lot of takeaways from that class. Just know your buildings and be ready for the non-traditional fire, because you can't employ your normal traditional tactics at those types of fires. So just a small sampling of some of our takeaways from FDIC 2021, a small sampling of how many great classes are available to the students that come here. And I can't emphasize, and Paul can't emphasize enough, the importance of coming to training like this if your budget can afford it. Go to the training in your area, get our younger members to embrace the training, because you know what else happens at these events? And I'll end on this. The networking.
Oh, gee.
Can't beat it. Second to none, right? We solve a lot of problems at night here, don't we?
Tom, you're one of the best here.
Oh. Solve a lot of problems the best at FDIC after hours. So that's it for us. Just another great FDIC. I'm so excited. I got 3 full days left here, and looking forward to coming back in April. And Paul, thank you so much for being my special guest, Chief Paul Gribner, Commissioner now, Paul Gribner from the Snyder Fire Department. The Snyder Fire Department, where I'm also a commissioner serving with Paul. And thank you to listening to another episode of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. Thank you to Fire Engineering, Clarion Events for the invitation to be here again. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Tom.